still Saturday night and I'm still studying Constitution law. I am a law student and I'm making these videos for the purposes of studying for my exams and studying for the bar. If it helps you, great. If not, just move along. If there's something that I have that's not quite right, please let me know so I can correct myself. And if anybody's watching this, they can also see that correction. So right now I am looking at fundamental rights. So for fundamental rights, we are looking at substantive due process. Okay, that's the realm that we're in, substantive due process. So there's procedural due process, which is looking at like the Fourth Amendment rights to make sure that due process, like in the procedures of maybe taking away somebody's right, are done correctly. Substantive due process, we are looking at the government's reason behind taking somebody's life, liberty, or property, okay? And so under just regular substantive due process, typically the rational basis applies. However, if it is a fundamental right, we are looking at something that's similar to strict scrutiny, okay? So for fundamental rights, the kind of the rule that we're looking at is, generally speaking, if a law substantially infringes on a fundamental right, it's the government's burden to show that the law in question is narrowly tailored to meet a compelling interest. Okay, so narrowly tailored to meet a compelling interest. It kind of rings a bell, right? Strict scrutiny, kind of strict scrutiny-ish. So again, let me repeat that. Generally speaking, if a law substantially infringes on a fundamental right, it's the government's burden to show that the law in question is narrowly tailored to meet a compelling interest. So first off in that analysis is, first let's look at the fundamental right, right? Is this right a fundamental right? And what does that even mean? What is a fundamental right? So the most, a common phrasing by the court is the due process clause specially protects those fundamental rights and liberties which are objectively deeply rooted in this nation's history and tradition and implicit in the concept of ordered liberty, such that neither liberty nor justice would exist if they were sacrificed. So I think of it kind of like a tree. Like I just think of like this tree that has these deep roots, right? These deep roots of history and tradition, right? And so some right that is so deep in those roots that if you took that away, then it would be as if justice or liberty were sacrificed. Okay. So for instance, like the right to marriage, that is something that is so deeply rooted in our history, in this nation's history and traditions, that if you took that away, it would be as if justice and liberty were being sacrificed. Okay. So that is what a fundamental right is. So first you want to determine if the right that is being taken away, the life, liberty, child, property, like the liberty, we're looking more like at the liberty part here. If that is taken away, like look at that and see if it is a fundamental right that's being taken away. And then the second part, remember, it's generally speaking if a law substantially infringes on a fundamental right. Okay, so substantially. So we have to look at the level of deprivation that is that's occurring here by like taking that away. Is it a high level of deprivation or just a small level of deprivation? Because it has to be like a substantial, right? A substantial infringement on that fundamental right. So if it's not substantial enough, if the scope of the deprivation is not sufficiently severe, then strict scrutiny might not apply. And then in that case, we would be looking again at like rational basis instead of strict scrutiny. Okay. So, and again, for strict scrutiny, we're looking to see if that law in question is narrowly tailored to meet a compelling government interest. Okay, and there are some fundamental rights that the courts have just determined are just fundamental rights. So I'll be going over those and in later videos. Happy studying!